Hi everybody, it's Yvonne and David from the Scottish Ghost Company, and over the next couple of weeks during lockdown we're just going to give you a wee tour and some wee stories about the ghosts of Glasgow. And tonight we're going to start off with the Necropolis. So the Necropolis is a Victorian multi-faith cemetery which is just adjacent to Glasgow Cathedral. It's got over 50,000 souls buried here. There's about 3,500 tombs, 19 war graves, 15 war graves from World War I, and there's 4, as far as we know, from World War II. There are quite a lot of kind of famous names and kind of monuments by world-known architects up there. One being Alexander Greek Thomson, and the other is one that you'll know, and Charles Rennie Mackintosh. It's a lovely place to visit if you get the chance to go up and see it. It's beautiful. Anyway, on to the ghosts and things. The Necropolis is quite famous for a couple of kind of ghosts and kind of haunted tales, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
The first one that we're just going to quickly talk about is the Gorbals Vampire. So, the Gorbals Vampire story. In September 1954, children from the Gorbals district of Glasgow were terrorised by tales of a vampire. Apparently this supposed beast, was 7 feet tall with blood red eyes and sharp iron teeth. And apparently this vampire ran amok in the cemetery and was to blame for the death of 2 young boys who had recently gone missing. So what happened was the locals got wind of this, and all the kids got together and met up in the cemetery. They all were carrying sticks and iron bars and things like that, claiming that they were after this big 7-foot vampire with the teeth. Obviously they never ever found the vampire with the big teeth, but that was the story, that this vampire came around killing kids and drinking blood and things like that, as vampires do. For 3 nights I think the kids came along to the City of the Dead, is what the Necropolis was better known for, and it's just a story that's kind of well known, isn't it? And
survived down the ages and generations.
Yeah. There's also another one, I don't know if any of you remember that, if you're of age to remember. There was a poem about another vampire, kind of female vampire, who had Jenny with the iron teeth, which again was another wee woman called Jenny who was supposed to be creeping around the Necropolis, and she would come and annoy the kids in the kind of local areas. If any of you got any stories about Jenny with the iron teeth, just please let us know. Excuse me. What else about the vampire? Anything else? Any other wee stories?
No. No.
Okay, the next one we're going to talk about is the Lady in White. Now, the Lady in White is a monument that stands in the southern Necropolis, and she was erected in memory of John and Magdalene Smith, who they were famous.
They were wealthy people.
They were wealthy people that lived in the kind of south side of Glasgow, and they had a housekeeper called Mary McNaughton. And the story is that Mary and Magdalene were at church.
Not the Mary Magdalene,
no,
but Mary and Magdalene.
Yeah, were at church somewhere near Shawlands, and it was a rainy day, and they had their umbrellas up and they were crossing the road, and they got hit by a tram. So all 3, this monument was erected in memory of the 3 of them, the husband, the wife and the housekeeper. The legend tells that when you walk past this lady, or this monument, she turns her head. And I've also just discovered another wee story that the locals say that if you run round this statue 3 times
and shout, white lady, white lady, white lady,
you turn into stone.
Mm-hmm.
So try it if you like.
And then the other legend of it was, if you're near this headstone and she turns her head and looks at you, you will immediately turn to stone as well. But I've not heard anybody that's happened to.
No. Yeah, so the other little story we have is about the Monty Mussolium, which I'll let David tell you a wee bit about Monty.
Well, the Monteiths were two brothers. So the eldest was called Major Archibald Monteith, and he served in the East India Company before he returned to Glasgow. He was buried in the Mussolium in 1842, and his brother James was buried there in 1850. The Monteith Mausoleum is the big round mausoleum you can see at the top of the hill from down in Bishop Street. The story goes about Archibald Monteith is that while he was serving in India, he made his fortune when an elephant carrying the Maharaja's precious gems fell, and Monteith ran away with all the gems and stuff. So pretty much made his money from being a thief, really.
Yeah.
According to the legend, anyway.
I don't know if any of you have done any of the tours at the Glasgow Necropolis, but it is worth it when we're out of lockdown and they're back on, that you actually do the tours, because they're really good. I have been personally, and myself and my friend were standing outside this particular mausoleum and heard that stones were actually thrown from the inside out to us, which was
landed at your feet.
One landed at our foot, the other one we heard kind of ping. So it was quite scary, because it was 1-2 in the morning and dark and windy, and we were with a little kind of group. So I have had first-hand experience of that mausoleum. And the other apparitions and ghosts of the necropolis we have had experience, because we've been up there personally, and we saw, I thought I saw a wee girl at my left hand side just kind of floating between some of the stones.
I saw her as well, and she had like an ankle length, like a white dress or white nightgown, and she had long dark hair. I would have said she was probably about 14 years old, and then just at the other side, running down from towards the top of the necropolis, there was a wee boy with short trousers on and a blue velvet blazer, and I would say he was probably about 5 or 6 years old. Probably going back to the 1850ish. But there's been a number of things reported in the necropolis. A lot of disembodied voices, people being touched, stones being thrown, crying. A lot of the crying comes from the bridge's size, though, that links the necropolis to the cathedral. And the bridge's size, obviously, the name says it all, really. It was where the women used to weep when they were taking the bodies over to the cemetery from the kind of cathedral side, and the processions were going over, and you would hear, there has been reports that you can hear people crying. I mean, we could go on all night about the necropolis, but we're just trying to keep it short, just some short stories every Saturday, just while we're on lockdown just now and we can't get out to play, really. And I think that's about all we've really got to say. Have you any more ghosty stories? Just that this guy who was in the necropolis around about midnight heard singing, and when he turned, he saw a very beautiful young girl with waist-length dark hair. She was barefooted, had a posy of daisies in her hand, and was wearing a long white gown. So that sounds pretty much like the lassie that we saw. It does. And she disappeared running between the gravestones. There's another report of someone seeing a little girl who stands at a grave and points towards the grave, saying, "That's my place, that's my place." Oh, that's sad. But another thing that people don't really know about the necropolis is that it used to be, way before it was a cemetery, obviously a couple of thousand years ago, it was a druid learning centre. It was a druid temple, which could explain an awful lot of the energies going about. Well, next week we'll just kind of move around, and we'll cover the other areas, probably from the east and kind of around. We'll pop some pictures up, and if anyone's got any stories to tell us about the necropolis, please feel free to comment underneath. Yes.
And thanks for listening.
And
We'll
we'll see you next week.
see you next week. Bye.
Bye.